Harvard University in 1895. Without wasting any time, Dr. DaQuan Lawrence, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. And Polisi, thank you, bro. Appreciate the opportunity. I know we short on time, so I'm gonna just get to it. I apologize in advance if I speak fast from New York. It's kind of what we do. Um, so can everybody see my screen? That a yes, no, maybe so. Just want to make sure I see the slides.
Yes, sir. We can see
All
them.
right,
Yes.
I see
Yes.
it. All right, bet. Okay. All right, so I have my slideshow view on. Um, want to make sure.
Doctor, let me disturb you a bit.
What's up?
Uh, I'd like to let everyone know that we're just going to let Dr. Lawrence speak for at least 30 minutes, and then when he's done, we're going to open a room for questions and answers. Thank you.
And if anybody has like any pertinent comments, I'm willing to stop just while I'm speaking. So just so you know, I would do the same thing in person. So I'm not trying to dominate. But again, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. So again, Black Conscious Dialogue. Thank you all for the opportunity. As mentioned, this is going to be covering the notion of double consciousness, as it was identified or termed as from an African American. And I'm just going to get to it. So this is our agenda. I tried to create 5 points. I have many slides. I tried to be brief, but I'm going to introduce my dissertation framework, which theoretically is based on another work of DuBois's, the Philadelphia Negro Study, which was published in 1899. Then I'm going to cover a little bit about Dr. William Edward Burghardt DuBois' backgrounds, as well as the concept of double consciousness. Get into some scholarly interpretations of double consciousness, some ones that I think are relevant. There are many scholarly interpretations, but I'm just trying to, again, concentrate on ones or highlight some that are relevant for today, modern society, as well as within Msanzi and the US. And then probably my favorite part is going to be the Africanist applications of double consciousness. I consider myself an Africanist in the spirit of Robert Sobukwe and many others. And then I want to have an open dialogue. So this is some tidbits about me. I hope you can see all of it. Trying to just make sure that the Teams window isn't in the way. So I'm from Harlem. If anybody has ever heard of Harlem, that's in Manhattan, New York. That's where I was born. I was raised by my mother, who was an orphan. My mom didn't grow up with either one of her parents. And my father, he was in the streets. He was what is known as a drug dealer or a street pharmacist, however you consider it. He served time in prison twice, went through a lot of things, both of my parents. So as I speak to you, I'm a statistic. I don't come from silver spoon. I don't come from a trust fund. I don't come from privilege in any sense of the imagination. I come from what is considered the underclass or the margins of the margins, or the subaltern, if we're going to go, academic vocabulary. So I have a daughter. Her name is Destiny. Probably the most important aspect of my life. I like reading. I like writing, helping people, and serving the African diaspora. As I mentioned, I came from orphan parents. So my mother grew up in foster care. She had me in foster care. That is one of the systems in social services that take in orphans. So I grew up on welfare, public assistance. Some of us may be familiar with welfare policies or the welfare state. So that's how I grew up. Again, like I said, no privilege by any stretch of the imagination. Been homeless, lived in shelters, had phones cut off, lights cut off, went without food. My mom did a bunch of things to make ends meet. So yeah, that's my perspective, and that influences all of my work, particularly as a researcher, as an educator, as a journalist, as anything. That's just my worldview. So as you see some of the things I do now. I teach. As I'm doing this now, I'm trying to be there in person as much as I can. And if it wasn't for my daughter being here, I would be there. So please believe that from the bottom of my heart. I also work with the United Nations in some capacity. The UN is something that I'm trying to penetrate. I mean that in every sense of the word, because as you'll see, we live in a global political economy that is very classist, elitist, racist, and upholds racialism. So the UN is part and parcel of that. The UN perpetuates that. And because of that, that's my mark. I also am one of the co-founders of a nonprofit that is active here in America that I would like to bring to South Africa, entitled Strong Men Overcoming Obstacles Through Hard Work, Smooth Inc. It is a nonprofit that works with young men and women, but it's an all-male organization. And then you see the blah, 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 the universities, formal education to me is just as important as informal education. So school has been my calling card. The reason I'm talking to you is because I've been, somebody, I guess, who's been identified as smart, intellectual, whatever that means to you. So yeah, these are the things that I've done. Morgan State is my first university that's in Baltimore. That's the reason that I'm talking to you today. The last two are private schools. Johns Hopkins is a private school in America that denied being in the Ivy League. They have their own reasons for doing that. And Howard University is where I studied and got my Ph.D. Shout out to Howard. So moving forward, these are some pictures, as I mentioned, again, from foster care. So you see me in the tub in New York, me on the train in New York. This is my mother. Let me pause here. My mother's name is Makeba. We pronounce it Makeba. Some of you may say Makeba. My mother has never been to South Africa. I just told you that my grandparents died, so she was an orphan. So my daughter's name is Destiny, and I'm in the middle, so I'm connecting the dots. As somehow, some way, I made it to South Africa. Somehow, some way, my mother's named after Mariam Makeba. You get the rest. I'm not even going to finish that. So here goes the dissertation framework. Again, this is what I was doing for the last 5 to 6 years. It was a mixed study that I conducted in Joburg and Swanee. I investigated the class structure in the modern post-apartheid South Africa, looking at specifically Black populations in the Gauteng province. Again, I know that it's vast. It's a lot of ground to cover. I did not go to as many neighborhoods as I wanted to go to. And I just applied for a postdoc research grant so I could continue my studies and hopefully publish a book. The core research questions for my study was, how does race continue to shape class and urban class constructions in South Africa? More specifically, how is the middle class defined in urban South Africa? From my perspective, again, as I mentioned, I come from the underclass. There's a lot of things in common between America and South Africa, particularly the role of whites and how they subjugate, marginalize, and oppress Black people. So just because you see the rappers, just because you see the celebrities, just because you see the Beyoncés, the Jay-Z's, the Oprahs, whomever you pay attention to, just because you see them, some of them are living from check to check too, and they too, again, are, I'm just going to stop there. Everything isn't what you see. There are many illusions. So let me just say that, and I'm going to stick to the topic. Utilizing class analysis tools provided by African diaspora scholars such as DuBois, Bantu Steve Biko, Amilcar Cabral, Frantz Fanon, Kwame Nkrumah, and Dr. Walter Rodney, as well as some white scholars. I don't consider myself a Marxist. I consider myself a post-Marxist. I flirted with Marxism at the time, but I don't think Marx was talking about African societies. So as much as I've met different individuals from the Communist Party, from the EFF, other radical freedom fighters in South Africa, I wouldn't call myself a Marxist. It doesn't mean that I'm against Marxists, but again, I just wouldn't call myself a Marxist. As I highlighted earlier, I'm an Africanist in the spirit of the Pan-Africanist Congress. So the theoretical basis of class was revised so I could apply this to South Africa. My study examined the social dimensions of inequality with emphasis on the distinctions between urban Black South Africans. The things that I tried to specifically look at were occupation, English language proficiency, access to the internet, bank account, ascribed status, which is how the employment market views you, and your employability based on your skill set, education, whatever have you. Sometimes it's how fair your skin is. Sometimes it's how beautiful you look, whatever that means. And then educational level, which, as I said, to me, informal education is just as important as formal education. What does that mean? Most of our grandparents didn't go to university. Most of our grandparents, again, were either working for, we could say, the apartheid regime, or in my country, we were, some people were the sons and daughters of slaves, and they didn't go to these private schools that we have the privilege of going to, or the public schools that we have the privilege of going to, but they also were educated, right? So to me, again, who am I to say, oh, you didn't go to university, so what you know isn't important? So when I came to Msanzi, I tried to speak to as many people as I could. And I didn't just focus on politicians. I didn't just focus on the elite. I didn't just focus on people who have a car or who have the means to do things. I wanted to talk to as many people as possible because I come from the so-called ghetto or the so-called street in America. So when I went to South Africa, who would I relate to? The people living on the streets. That's how it works. The theoretical framework, like I said, was an adaptation of DuBois's Philadelphia Negro Study. This is me in Sunnyside, as you can see. It was very important for me, again, like I said, to try to use the Africanist perspective because this data was produced by people who are African, Black, whatever we want to identify as. And again, I'm very explicit when I say that the world, we now live in a neoconservative world order, but formerly it was a neoliberal world order. It really doesn't make a difference whether it's liberal or conservative, red or blue. It's still capitalist, it's still classist, and it still opposes racialism. So for me, I use these concepts, Black consciousness, as I'll later talk about, class suicide, the importance of culture, as highlighted by Fanon, conscientism or conscientism, however you want to say, focusing again on the conscience, as Nkrumah highlighted, and Dr. Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. So that brings us here. So I say all of that to say my research, again, uses DuBois's theory, or I use DuBois's work to form my theoretical basis, as DuBois in the 19th century highlighted that the color line or race was the biggest problem of the 20th century. And for me, I believe that race continues to be the biggest problem of the 21st century. So here we go. Double consciousness, what is it? What is it? What is it? So I'm going to start. I'm not going to read all of this. I'm going to skip. But everybody's origins determines their worldview. That's something that I believe. So DuBois was born in Northeast America. As I highlighted, I was born in New York. He was born a couple of states higher than New York, the New York State and Massachusetts, which is where Boston is. Very racist society. But DuBois, he actually was in a moderately liberal society where they, I guess you could say, they accepted the Blacks, whatever, again, that means to you. And a society where he was accepted, he was extremely close to a lot of liberal institutions, one being Harvard, which eventually he became the first African-American to earn his Ph.D. from Harvard. He also attended Fisk University, which, as Golisi highlighted, Howard is a Black school, or HBCU. Fisk is also a Black school. So during his 95 years, I think it's very apt that we're talking about DuBois now because his death anniversary date is 2 weeks from today. During his 95 years, DuBois did a lot. He taught sociology, which is what I studied during my undergraduate university. So when I was not first introduced to him, but that's when I was able to dive deep. He did a lot, again, as you can see, one of the founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. He was a civil or human rights activist. He was a teacher, a prolific writer, and very instrumental in the early Pan-African Congresses. And he also was at the founding of the United Nations in 1945, advocating on behalf of, again, Blacks. He delved into communism and socialism, somewhat, I don't know, some people would say not enough. Some people would say, again, it was more of a disguise, or he flirted with it. But neither here, whether, here nor there, He was one of the first empirical sociologists that studied, again, Blacks in Philadelphia in his work, The Philadelphia Negro. And that was the first community study by an American sociologist. I'm going to stop there again. That was the first community-based study in America. What I tried to do with my dissertation was to internationalize his work and conduct a community-based study in South Africa. Again, I don't think that's ever been done before. But again, I'm not seeking cookies or praise or anything like that. That's just what I figured that I needed to do, because not because it hadn't been done before, but it was the right thing to do. DuBois first introduced the notion of double consciousness in his 1903 work, The Souls of Black Folk, while providing an anecdote about his childhood, in which a young girl refused to trade a traveling card with him in grade school. He specifically said that she looked at him and refused to interact with him. And at that point, that's when he recognized that he was different, that something about him was different, that within society, even though he was in Massachusetts, he was in the New England states, he was, in fact, what we consider as Black. You see the quote here where he talks about how the Negro is somewhat of a seventh son. And then he says that, my apologies, I quoted DuBois's work, but as often in literature, we see he is often used, which I think is, as we know, patriarchal. I think it should be he or she. It should be sees himself or herself, things like that. I didn't add that because I wanted to keep it as which, but this is something, again, that I'll continue to do in my writing. So regarding the subject of class, DuBois was a social science pioneer who understood that theories and notions that refuse to examine or acknowledge the relations among the economic exploiters and the exploited or the subjugated do not accurately explain the realities of the human condition. So what does this mean? Pretty much double consciousness is looking at ourselves through the eyes of white people, measuring ourselves based on proximity to whiteness. We are good, we're smart, we're rich, we're wealthy, we have worth based on what white society says about Black people. This is what double consciousness is alluding to. There are different interpretations of double consciousness, as we're going to get into, but in a nutshell, that's pretty much what it is. And what Black people or African descendants find themselves, or people of African descent, what we find ourselves doing is code switching. Code switching can be identified as changing your language, changing how you talk, changing what you wear, changing how you interact with people based on how the white society perceives you. So even myself, in this instance, I struggle with what to wear for this presentation. I only put on this suit and this tie because I figured that I wanted to be formal. But what does that mean? Why can't we show up as our authentic selves, right? The only reason I have my hair up is so you can see my face. But in any other instance, again, I could talk about everything that we talk about at university with a jersey or with things in my hair or looking quote unquote Black or having Bantu twist, or I could be my authentic self in any capacity or any environment. And that's something that's my strength. When I went to the United Nations in Geneva, I had on my do-rag. I made it a point to not take off my do-rag because, again, I wanted to send a message that DaQuan is here, not the people that you think are here. I'm not here to acquiesce. I'm not here to be subservient. I'm here to talk about how Patrice Lumumba was killed in the first United Nations peacekeeping mission. That was important to me. And I went with Lumumba's book in hand, The Assassination of Patrice Lumumba. So I don't water myself down for white people. And who that tends to bother the most is Black people, not white people. Moving on, DuBois versus everybody. During the 20th century, DuBois was often critiqued or opposed by influential contemporaries, including Booker T. Washington and Marcus Mosier Garvey. I'm much more aligned with Garvey's perception of the world than possibly maybe DuBois, but I think I'm also eclectic, so I try to use a little bit of everybody. As one of the foremost African-American scholars and pioneer of sociology, DuBois's intellectualism and approach to transforming social, political, and economic conditions impacting the American Negro was often juxtaposed against different approaches. Here are two examples: Booker T. Washington's economic development, which he believed with the Hampton Tuskegee School should use vocational tools or farming to empower Blacks to change our circumstances, whereas Garvey was much more radical in terms of his independence. And Garvey met with members of the Ku Klux Klan. If you're not familiar with the Ku Klux Klan, that's one of the white nationalist organizations that was started in Indiana, that used to hang and still does hang people that look like us. Garvey, again, was so radical that he was willing to meet with individuals in the KKK just to advance rights for Black people. Garvey was not somebody who wanted to acquiesce to the status quo, or he did not believe in being educated at predominantly white institutions. And just so you know, even HBCUs in this country were created by white people. So we have somewhat of a quandary where, again, the public education or even the private education that Black people receive is, we could say, surveilled or influenced by white people. What does that mean to you? That's something for you to determine. Contemporary critiques classified DuBois's approach to Pan-Africanism as ideal and not rooted in African realities or lived experience. So, getting into some scholarly interpretations of double consciousness or unlocking new horizons. This picture is important to me. This is one of the first pictures I took when I traveled to Msanzi in 2021. I've been dreaming about coming to South Africa probably since my early 20s. Maybe, I think when Mandela passed away, I think Madiba passed away in 2013. So I think it was probably around that time. And I think that was actually right around when the EFF was founded. So since I was 23, I was born in 1990. So around 23, since I was 23 years old, I wanted to be in Msanzi. And again, like I said, if it wasn't for my daughter, I would relocate. And I still do plan on relocating. So how have modern scholars written about double consciousness? Here goes extremely modern timeline. As we are now in the 2020s, I could have literally walked you through the 20th century and looked at interpretations from the 1910s, when the Union of South Africa was created. I could have, brought you to the 1940s when the apartheid state was created. I could have gone through the 50s, 60s, 70s, civil rights movement, things like that, or the independence movement of Africa. But I didn't choose to do that. Again, for the sake of time, I tried to just focus on modern interpretations of double consciousness that I think are relevant to our discussion today. So in 2020, Thomas sheds light on how the concept applies to women and gender roles, elucidating how women experience a tertiary tier of Black consciousness and double consciousness as they are marginalized via the social construct of race, in addition to patriarchal institutions and paradigms. Her work is called The Double Consciousness, Gender Construction in America. In 2021, Lento, a professor at UNISA, calls for the need to rethink of the notion of double consciousness as liberating, focusing on the dual encoded language of Negro spirituals. Negro spirituals developed into the blues. The blues were influential with jazz. Jazz was influential later with the development of hip hop. Hip hop was something that birthed rap, which we now have. And a little bit later, I'm going to talk about how Amapiano also fits into this. I think Lento's work is very, very noteworthy. Hawkins and Davis in 2024 declared that expansions of the idea, such as white double consciousness, go figure. Now, we talk about double consciousness, DuBois is talking about Black people. Now, white people are saying they got to have double consciousness too. Can't have anything. White double consciousness and kaleidoscopic consciousness, which is utilized by the privileged groups and are not rooted in the experiences of oppression that we as Black people experience. So these are the things that I'm going to try to quickly go through, again, for the sake of time. Just doing a time check. So with the double consciousness, shout out to Albertina Sisulu and all of, again, the women, warriors, freedom fighters in South Africa and even across the continent. Much of my work in the past has focused on what male or men Africanists have done. And as you saw, I'm here because of my mother. I have a daughter. Women are incredibly important to me. My queen is actually on this call right now. So I'm committed to doing a lot more scholarly work on women in the future. And again, forgive me for not highlighting enough contributions of women in this presentation, because there are many. We would not be here if it wasn't for women. And that's before the Me Too movement. That's before the Black Lives Matter movement. This is who I am because I'm from Harlem. So people talk about Dr. Martin Luther King. I like to talk about Ella Jo Baker. Who's Ella Jo Baker? She taught Dr. Martin Luther King. So that's where I go. Everything comes from a woman. Thomas asserts that women and gender studies contribute greatly to our understanding of the social and cultural world that we live in, yet societal or social construction roles that place women below men is why the gender line remains a problem. Notice she said the gender line remains a problem, similar to how DuBois said the color line or race remains a problem. Thomas highlighted that problems around inequality regarding the treatment of women in comparison to men exist today for women of color who experience double consciousness, which I completely agree with. And again, how could I be a father of a young girl and not acknowledge something like this? So again, I could talk to you all day about this. Thomas maintains that a gender line exists and it was created by the white dominated gender to not only keep races divided, but as a set or subset of hierarchy when it comes to gender. The male gender is socially seen as the tough and praiseworthy one, while women and females are seen as inferior to men, particularly, again, Black females. Here, I'm going to highlight that womanism. I consider myself a womanist. White people often try to trip you up and ask you, are you a feminist? And womanism acknowledges the role of the Black woman. Feminism marginalizes Black women. I'm not, again, going to go into that. This is not the topic for today. That's just something I feel the need to say. But Du Bois believed, according to Thomas, that we lived in a world where, again, Black and white men should supposedly have a drink at the bar, but also where women and men should have equal rights as well. And through, again, various mediums over the last couple of years or centuries or decades, I would probably say decades, we learned about the glass ceiling and how the working conditions of women in the global South countries and also all over the world experience injustices. And again, I asked M. Golisi to let you know Happy Women's Day, which I believe was last week in South Africa. So again, big ups to the women again. Du Bois's work on gender is not recognized globally. I wonder why. Even though gender and race are interrelated on a global level, people focus on Du Bois's work with race, but they don't highlight his work in gender. That's something that's important to me. And again, finally, Thomas argues that double consciousness helps bridge the divide between women, white women, and Black or minority women. However, women of all races need to band together in order to create true change. And as men, we should support all women. There's no reason not to. So getting into Professor Lento's work, rethinking the concept of double consciousness in Du Bois's The Soul of Black Folks. Lento's article uses Gilroy's notion of the ambiguity or the duality of modernity and creating identities in the Black Atlantic. Black Atlantic meaning, again, Black people on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, not just in Europe, not just in America. I believe Africa also exists on the other side of the Atlantic. Oftentimes when people in Westphalian states talk about the Black Atlantic or just the world at large, they overlook the global South. That is something that, again, I'm trying to change. And that's the reason I teach in public schools as well as college. So Lento argued that we need to rethink double consciousness and at the same time amplify the multiple ways in which Black people experience slavery in America. Lento specifically focused on the Negro spirituals, which is what Du Bois did and the Souls of Black Folk. And he said that the Negro spirituals, or we could just simply say Black music, right? This is where we'll get into Amapiano later. But Black music has coded language that demonstrates the oppressive conditions, right? Our realities and what we go through, as well as, again, they have liberation tools because we're empowering each other due to the dual meanings. Some of it, again, is coded or hidden language that other people may not understand if you aren't Black. Lento writes that there is a need to rethink the concept of double consciousness so that it is not reduced to confusion, alienation, and resignation from imagining alternative livelihoods. Lento demonstrates that Negro spirituals, or I'm just going to say, again, Black music, is an expression of the experiences of Black people in the world during and after slavery. These experiences, or apartheid, I would say, since again, I'm talking to people in one of probably my favorite country in the world. I do love South Africa more than America. I have no shame in saying that. These experiences of African Americans include lash, rape, racism, murdering, lynching of slaves and Negroes in American society, which Du Bois argued transpired because of the racial ideologies used to justify exploitation of Black people in America. Lento also argued that double consciousness enables and allows Black people to possess a wider cultural sieve or worldview or lens or specs. We have this particular way of looking at things to make sense of the world. In other words, double consciousness enabled Blacks to use their songs to reflect their past, present, and future. meaning that for Black people living under oppressive conditions, the identities embedded in double consciousness can be oppressive as well as liberating. Double consciousness appears to be the condition of a possibility that enables humanity to command multiple identities that can be deployed when necessary. And finally, something that I might consider is comical: the future of double consciousness, epistemic virtue, identity, and structural anti-Blackness. I owe a great deal of credit to doctors Hawkins and Davis, because his and their work are incredibly integral to this presentation. This article talked about, again, white double consciousness and kaleidoscopic double consciousness, which were introduced by two scholars in 2015 and 2013, where they tried to, I guess we could say, borrow the idea of double consciousness and talk about how white people can be racially self-aware and how privileged people can also be self-aware and have some form of intellectual or moral, I guess, impetus that make them rationalize or sympathize, or I would probably say, I guess, pity Black people in our experience. The authors uphold that the notion that although the world today is much different than the world in which DuBois was living when he wrote The Souls of Black Folk, it is clearly evident that the world of the 21st century is not post-racial. Even though America tried to brainwash the world and say, oh, racism is gone because they had Obama, Oprah, Jay-Z, Obama, still nigger, right? So that's actually something I wrote in a poem that I'm trying to get to. But again, it's not Trump. Trump did not create racism. This country was well racist before Trump got elected. So again, let me say that. I think it's a ruse and a ploy to get people to participate in a neo-conservative agenda, because this has always been a colonial society, a meta-colonial society, a colonial society, again, in every sense of what Fanon wrote and others were talking about. We've never not been colonized. Again, like I said, no matter who was a millionaire or billionaire and how they look, we've always been colonized and they've always oppressed us. So I'm going to skip the last two or three paragraphs and just, again, mention that this study was very important to this work because, again, as we see nowadays, many liberal whites believe that they can rationalize with us in order to kind of, I would say, appropriate our movements, our bodies, our music, our sexuality, our approaches to life, our culture, again, as Fanon would say, and this stifles us. Because again, oftentimes, what you may find, or what I would quickly say is, the poorest white man agrees with the richest white man on almost everything. It's only Black people who say, oh, I'm not like those Blacks. I'm not like those natives. I'm not like those Black people that don't have education. I have class. I'm not like those people who live outside. I'm not like those people who are from the townships. I'm not like those people because I speak English, right? White people don't say that. It's only Black people who say that. And again, we're measuring ourselves in proximity to whiteness. So as I draw to the conclusion, I'm trying to move quickly. Africanist applications of double consciousness and the 21st implications. How does double consciousness impact social, political, and economic conditions? Shout out to my man Asanda. He's in Cape Town right now. I got to go back to Kailisha. Again, one of my favorite places. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, for those who missed it, I was born in what is considered the ghetto in New York. I was raised in foster care. I was born to an orphan mother and a drug dealer father. I didn't mention that he had two children when he was 15 years old. So as his eldest son, it's important for me when I go to Africa, I'm going to what is considered the hood. I'm going to Sunnyside. I'm going to Hillbrook. I'm going to Soweto. I'm going to Kailisha. Again, I'm not coming to South Africa to party. I'm not coming to be on a yacht. I'm not coming to look pretty and take pictures on Instagram. I'm coming to go speak to people so I could get their experiences, so I could write, so I could outwrite DuBois. That's my life's mission. Here goes some of my favorite people. The Africanist applications of double consciousness. These are some of the theories that I used in my dissertation, and I believe that they were applicable for today's presentation. So Biko's concepts about Blackness and Africanity being positive qualities and features of the experiences of indigenous South Africans is very relevant. Biko's Black consciousness movement and Sasso redefine Blackness as something positive that should be honored and celebrated. This is, again, something that I often use. Amilcar Cabral, my guy, Amilcar Cabral. We don't talk about him enough. but I'm always got my Amilcar Cabral book, Unity and Struggle. Cabral's notion of class suicide and class consciousness are very important. One, for the sake of going into the details, he upheld that colonial societies of the global South were stratified or organized into the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, the working class, the lower bourgeoisie, and the upper proletariat, and the underdeveloped peasant class, which would be the lower proletariat, as the economies transition from agricultural to manufacturing-based production. His theory posits that no matter where you fall on the spectrum, the world will not change unless people are able to take off their cool, take off what is considered the formal aspect of themselves and actually be themselves. If you're not able to be yourself, then the world is never going to change because you're always going to act like you're scared of white people in some capacity. So Cabral said that everybody needed each other despite whichever aspect you fell on the class spectrum. That was very important to me. And again, like I said, if you're not willing to commit class suicide, your children will grow up in a world where they're probably oppressed more than our ancestors were in the past. Believe you me, we do live in a surveillance state. So this is being watched. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's conscientism or conscientism. And Nkrumah highlighted the significance of Afro-centered thought and the need to respect Africanity or Blackness or one's African personality despite the influence and hegemonic dominance of European ideologies. Which European ideologies? Religion. Religion. I think Africans had religion before Europeans came. Maybe I'm wrong. I know I'm not wrong, but it's not about me being right. The idea is we should be, again, independent thinkers, and we should be able to conceive of ourselves outside of white people. This is something that I'm going to keep working on. This is a part of my thesis and my dissertation, as I mentioned. So please don't get caught up in this. But DuBois and the Philadelphia Negro, he came up with a classification system based on income. When we're talking about class, it's usually an economic treatment. What I tried to do with my dissertation was somewhat of a social, political, cultural, and economic treatment, right? So one could say, using Du Bois's theory, that you are grade 4 or underclass if you earn between 0 and 1,900 Rand per month, or excuse me, per year, which would equate to 1,583 Rand per month. And these are figures from 2016. Actually, this needs to be updated. If you earn between 19,000 and 197,000 per year, which equates to 1,584 to 16,417 Rand per month, you would be considered lower class. If you fall within the third category or grade 2, from the bottom, when I say third, I'm right here, 1,970,000 to 688,000, which equates to 16,000.4 or 57,000.3, then you would be middle class. The middle class is where I would say that probably the most people need to commit class suicide. Because again, the middle class is aspiring, if we go back up here to the top, Schultz, Zamia, and Lembrandt, who studied the middle class in South Africa, they identified again that their class is, in my opinion, is permeable, meaning that it can change. You can be at the bottom, which is economically insecure, right? Your average probability of exiting poverty is very low, right? I would consider you economically insufficient. I wouldn't say again that you're poor, because people say poor and they label you and they think, oh, I grew up poor, so that means that you have to be poor for the rest of your life, or that means that they're subhuman. Just because somebody lives on the street, it doesn't mean that they don't have information that will benefit you. Because when I came to Msanzi, most of the people that protected me were the people that lived on the street. Everybody that we meet in life is going to know something that we don't, right? So again, I could explain the rest of the chart, but you can see where this is going. For the sake of the conversation, I want to hurry up and get through this. Key takeaways. Double consciousness and the veils work two ways. While people of African descent may emotionally, feel and psychologically assume that they are ostracized by the dominant or white society, those who identify as white or Caucasian are also limited by their social constructions, meaning white people cannot do what Black people do, or travel where Black people could seamlessly meander, such as underdeveloped neighborhoods, township, or ghettos where Blacks are the predominant demographic. Whites also experience forms of alienation and are considered the other in environments where so-called minority people are abundant or where we thrive. Which fields do we thrive? Which industries do we thrive? There are many, but if you let them tell it, If you let the liberal tell it, all we do is work for white people. But we are very naturally gifted in many areas. Class is permeable. Individuals can engage, learn from, and influence people from different class backgrounds. Therefore, class categorizations such as low income, middle income, high income, working poor, working class, middle class, high income, they're insufficient and they're misnomers within processes of social stratification. Social stratification is what I've been studying since I was in undergrad, since I was 18 years old. The buffer or the nexus or the connection between the colonizers and the colonized is the middle class. This is what a lot of literature says, and this is what I found in my dissertation. Double consciousness can also be a tool for liberation, as Lento said. Similar to Negro spirituals, the blues, jazz, hip hop, or amapiano, or other musical and literary art forms, the concept of double consciousness can be used by oppressed Black populations as a form of coded language or engagement, enabling metacolonial subjects, us, to transcend modern abstractions and institutions that maintain the status quo. And this is where I'm going to end off. I would like to play this if we have time, because this is something that I created 7 years ago. This is something I created 7 years ago when I could not get a job. Wait, let me see. I think I clicked the wrong one. My fault. When I finished my master's, I could not get a job, right? So what did I do? I wrote my behind off, and I didn't cry. I worked any jobs that I could, and God gave me the opportunity to write. So this is something that I wrote. Please listen.
Nah, we cannot hear it.
Oh, you can't hear it?
Nah,
Oh,
you
that's
cannot
whack.
hear it. Can you
I gotta
please
send you the
share?
link.
Can you please just share the link?
Yeah, I got you. All right, so I'm done. Yeah, my fault. I got
Yeah,
you.
I think that also can save us some time so that
Tight.
the audience can get to ask some questions as well.
I'm tight. I'm tight. I got you with the link though. Say less. Again, with further ado, let me do this. I got my contact. Let me go back to this real quick. They lucky. I'm gonna blame the government. I always blame the government. Um, so lucky. So let's go here. And these are my references. I could send you all this presentation if you want. And this is my contact. And yeah, I'm done. So we can open this up for questions. I'm gonna shut up.
Thank you so much, DaQuan. Thank you. That was a great presentation, man. We really appreciate that. Personally, I'm not going to waste everybody's time by asking questions, you know. I'm just going to send it straight to them so that they can take this opportunity to ask some questions. Anyone who has some questions for Dr. DaQuan Lawrence, please raise your hand. Let me see. Uh, Siyabonga Mbasa. Please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask.
No, thank you very much, leadership, and greetings to everyone. I'm sorry, man, I came late to the presentation. I came whereby he was talking about Marxism, but not practicing it. So I'm interested because I believe they intertwine. So why would he say that he's not practicing Marxism, or he understands Marxism differently? Thank you, sir.
I think I didn't hear one aspect of it, but I think the question was why. I mentioned that I'm not a Marxist and I understand Marxism differently. Again, from my American vantage point, I think that this Das Kapital, I read it. I don't think he was talking about Africa. I think he was talking about Paris. I think he was talking about Brussels. I think he was talking about London. I think he was talking about Westphalian states and cities. But I don't think he was talking about Africa. And if you didn't know, Marx is also a Luciferian. So there's many things to unpack, but the idea of me being somebody that's very explicit when I talk about class, my thesis was explicitly focused on class. I have no problem talking about class, but I just don't identify as a Marxist. That's all. On my LinkedIn, it says proletariat evolutionist. So I'm a member of the proletariat class. I'm using a Marxist notion, but I don't identify as a Marxist. That's it. I'm not against Marxism. I just think that similar to communism and the Communist Party of South Africa, or South African Communist Party, again, before the name was changed, there's ways that whites use socialism and use communism to maneuver Black people, because again, they still don't get the marginalization that we experience. So they're not members of the subaltern. They're not colonized the way we are. So that's just really my reason for not identifying as Marxist. I'm not trying to stop anybody that's Marxist. I'm not trying to stop anybody except people that's trying to destroy us.
The next hand is from Kamalenkosi. Kamalenkosi, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
No, I don't. Am I audible? Can we all hear me there?
Yes, sir. You're clear.
Okay. No. Greetings, leaders. Before I ask my question, I just would like to add on what Dr. DaQuan said about Marxism. I do agree with him when he says that Marx wasn't necessarily speaking about Black people, because of, if you look in some of his studies, it doesn't necessarily speak about the enslavement of Black people. Because if you look thoroughly, there was a time when he was banished in Russia and went in to stay in France. And while he was in France, he never wrote anything related to the enslavement of Black people in France. So in those bases, I do make an argument that he was somehow a racist. But nonetheless, my question is it possible for for Africa to use Black consciousness as a uniform ideology that will bring about unity in Africa? And I'm speaking about this because of recently in South Africa, we had the immigration crisis. There were protests about immigrations and all of that. But in my mind, I do believe that if Black consciousness was adopted as an ideology in Africa, it will then bring African people together, because of, there is a saying that says, if I can love the one that looks like me, then I'll be able to love everyone in the continent. But nonetheless, my question is it possible to, or is it possible, or is it too late to use Black consciousness as an ideology that can unify Africa, in contrary to Pan-Africanism? Thank you very much.
No, thank you, brother. And thank you for the first question as well. I love both of the questions. The first thing I'm gonna do is deeply sigh. I think it is possible, but then I think that there's always detractors, or there's always, it's hard to get consensus, politically speaking, and so we talk about the 54 African states and the thousands of ethnic groups and languages. I think what we have to identify, and this goes into what Nkrumah was talking about, all of the I don't want the lights in my eyes. All of the colonialism was different. So the French oppresses the quote unquote French Empire, and the African states different. Britain, they use oppression and colonialism different. The American states, even though we didn't formally colonize, America has a lot to do with the modern global political economy, as well as Spain, as well as Portugal. Germany and its influence, right? So I think we need to start there and kind of reverse engineer the Berlin Conference of 1884-85. And I think we need to be explicit with ourselves. And then the other aspect is us as intellectuals, or us as readers, or us as political activists or human rights activists. I think we're often stifled because our people need money. Our people are trying to struggle to make ends meet. So what often happens is we go for the money fast. And this is one of the things I'm about to write. I don't mean to be too long-winded with this answer, but similar to the way that there's proxy wars in Africa, where different groups or paramilitary organizations are sponsored by different European governments, and they make them fight against each other. And there's many ethnic clashes over East Africa, Central Africa, South Africa. That's the same way that gangs operate in America, because gangs were originally created to protect the community, but then the CIA infiltrated the gangs and started creating proxy wars where they now control the gangs to make them subjugate and oppress the community. What is the number one product of gang now? Death. The gangs kill each other. So you have a bunch of, if we're familiar with brain drain, instead of Africans leaving the continent to go to America or Europe, now we have so many bright minds that are being slaughtered and exposed and exploited by us. So if the white people can, control us through, proxy means, that's one of the things I think that stifles us, and that's where the classism continues. And I would just end by saying, um, I have many poems that I could share, but I have a theory called Black Equalism, and that mixtape that I have on SoundCloud, Black Equalism, I'll share it in the link as well, or in the chat. I think that we just have to, again, as Cabral said, we have to commit class suicide, and it's not the white man is the problem. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying everything has to be black or white, because again, a lot of times it's us that are stopping each other. But again, there are a lot of Black or African billionaires and millionaires, right? But we do business with white people, right? So one thing I said when I went to the United Nations is that the World Trade Organization, they set the terms that African nations sell their products. When did that ever happen to European countries? When did African nations get to tell European countries how they're going to, market their global products, right? So in so many facets and so many forms, colonialism never stopped, right? And again, I just think that we need to be explicit about that. And many scholars or many people that work in universities, they don't say that, because again, they're collecting a check because they got to feed themselves. So again, we go around in a circle where unity in Africa, or just unity amongst the diaspora, it's so many impediments. But again, until we have that, moral or spiritual eureka moment where we realize like we don't have to continue that, I don't think things are going to change. And I don't mean to be pessimistic. That's just me being real.
Thank you for that. The next question is from Manchiose Bulelani. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mko. Please do confirm if you can hear me.
Hear you, bro.
Yeah, thank you, DaQuan, Dr. Lawrence, for the cultural presentation first. When you said you were from Harlem, I knew it was real, because being interested in the life of the diaspora in Africa, having learned about Bumpy Johnson, even though the nature of the man is bad, you understood what he stood for at the time in which he existed, and having said no to white power in Harlem and governed over it himself, that's something which speaks of where the person comes from, the history of the place. So I really appreciated that. You said something right now which just probed a question in me, and it's precisely our existence and the language which we use, the language of post and historically. It denies us of admitting our existence in the world, such as how double consciousness sort of places us. That we would say it's a historic, that Howard is a HBCU, it's a historically Black institution. Same as here in South Africa, we refer to Forte, WUSU as historically Black universities. But what is historic about them? Because they exist today as being Black, right? Maybe not in the politic of the institution itself, because they are all Western universities, if we're being real. But in a sense, I just think that the language of post-apartheid, historically Black, denies us our existence in these universities. I would just like to hear your chat on that. But on double consciousness specifically, I sort of like was reading up before this lecture on Fanon and sort of recalling on Black Skin, White Mask and Biko, recapturing some of the things which I had learned. And maybe the question is, when you were in South Africa, did you go past the township? Did you go to the Bantu stands and try to sort of like get what Black consciousness means for the people there? Certainly because the conditions of oppression are different, in the sense that you put double consciousness as proximity to whiteness. There's some proximity to whiteness in South Africa in which maybe some people in, say, for example, in the semi-urban areas might have. I'm not saying that they do have it, but as a point of introspection and searching for more truth than what we have, sort of to make an example of it is that if we look at Fanon and the example he makes of growing up in Martinique, being born in Martinique, and then going to France and having to live with people who are from Martinique who have went to France, and then seeing Africans in France who are Senegalese who don't speak the French language as well, meaning that they don't have the proximity to whiteness which Martinican men would normally have, and as a result of that, they are more of the other, is what I'm really trying to get to. So as to the interconnectedness between these philosophies and these worldviews about Blackness can only be truly interrogated if we get to go to those conditions where oppression lies. So yeah, my plea is to you, when you do come back to Kaelicha, my door is open for you to visit the Bantu stands as well, beyond the townships. Yeah.
One, again, thank you, bro. And just again, work backwards. So I did not get to visit the Bantu stands. I think I was pointed in a direction, but I didn't actually go. That is something I wanted to do, and that was me just being limited to time and resources. One thing, as my daughter gets older, because she's about to start grade 2, so as she gets older and she gets to be more independent, I'm gonna be able to stay a little bit longer, and I want her to come with me too. You highlighted something like as they say in academia, or in African studies, is the language hierarchy. So as much as, again, I'm pro-Black, I highlight our ancestors, and I might have a good, well-meaning heart and mind, I'm talking English. So I'm still limited, as you just mentioned, to these colonial languages. And for those of us who want to have proximity to whiteness, me being able to master the English language is good. But for me, where I'm trying to kind of reverse and go backwards, I'm limited. I'm extremely limited because of me not being able to speak Xhosa, me not being able to speak Zulu, me not being able to speak against Sotho, all of these different the languages. If I could master all of the languages, that would really give me a superpower, because then again, I'll be able to communicate around and through these white people. And you highlighted again the difference between the urban and the rural aspect. Again, me being a city-born person from America, that's the reason I designed the study as studying the urban class structure. And as I was told from a South African professor, Dr. Mnyendu, who was on my committee, who's Zulu, and, these things that I want to do are like life's work. I wouldn't be able to fit all of this in my dissertation, right? So thank you again for opening your door, because again, when I come back, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And as a community-based scholar, I'm influenced by the community. Everything I do is for the community. So again, why would I not listen to the input in terms of which direction I should be going? And then lastly, as you said about Harlem, so my grandfather, he actually ran numbers, and my grandmother, she actually sold crack. My father actually sold drugs. So for me, when we talk about the underclass or the people, again, that are in the informal sector, I have more respect for the informal sector than I have for the formal sector, believe it or not. Because again, I've seen both sides. And again, this is what all white people again don't understand. They can't comprehend. I see the government infiltration. I see the blacks making something out of nothing every day. I see the people who are what is it, rapidly or radically independent, as you mentioned, such as a Bumpy Johnson. And I see again how the people who create criminality are the lawmakers. You know, it's not necessarily the people who are committing crimes. And that's not me trying to, give a pass to the people who have what's considered the thuggish life, as Tupac would say. But similar to Tupac, again, he was trying to empower and educate those masses. If you educate the child soldier, if you educate the drug dealer, if you educate the sex worker, then what happens? They become unstoppable. And that's really, again, that's what Amilcar Cabral was talking about. Our wealth is in the quote unquote peasant class. Our wealth, again, in the people, like you said, again, that don't live in the cities, that don't speak French, that don't speak Portuguese, that don't speak English. That's where the wealth is. It's not with the people that are working with white people and that have all of these 6 PhDs. Like, what does that do? You got 6 PhDs, but you still doing the same thing. So that's just how I look at it. But I would love to get your contact information, bro. And I'm gonna shut up so I can get to another question. Sorry for being long-winded.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for shutting up. The next question is from Ubachanikas. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mko. So first and foremost, I have not been given the platform to, appreciate or rather to give my vote of thanks, but I think it's only fair that I do that before I pose my comment and question to Dr. Lawrence. That thank you for this presentation. As I speak for myself, I wouldn't say I was conscientized with understanding double consciousness. So I think even with the topic of this masterclass, it pushed a sense of interest in me. So I really appreciate how you brought your perspective and your experience between your US and your South African context, and I think I'm actually impressed with you how you are able to integrate South Africa, US, and you seem to quite know quite a lot about South Africa. I also found your argument about double consciousness, where you mentioned it to be sort of like a double-edged sword of some note. And I think you made an example with Amapiano, which was quite thought-provoking. It made me think whether consciousness can extend beyond the individual and become something collective through culture and shared experiences. So my question would be, I think it's directed to you. It's more like a personal question of some sort. Do you think cultural movements, or rather, like your how do I put it, your Amapiano, can transform double consciousness from an experience of navigating how others see Black people into a form of agency where Black communities begin to shape how they are represented and understood in their own terms? I hope you're able to catch my question.
No, absolutely. I was just listening. I think that's it's a wonderful question. I think it's insightful, and I think oftentimes the answers lie in the questions. Yes, just to be quick, and to me again, if I was able to again speak more South African languages, and the life is funny. Not only speak languages, but if I was able to dance better, because again, I have all of this up here, but I'm limited in my rhythm, so I'm also learning how to dance, right? So, South Africa has been teaching the world, not just because of the anti-apartheid movement, but the world loves Amapiano. Western society, you got people in France and Europe, so many DJs in America that infuse Amapiano and different other Afro beats or other different styles of African music. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about Fanon's writings about culture. The world continues to appropriate Black people in our productions, and it's only when we see the value in ourselves. Because again, oftentimes, even like the Amapiano producers or the DJs or the musicians and the artists, again, they're looking for sponsorships, they're looking for checks, they're looking for deals and musical opportunities with these corporations that again are obviously ran by these white people. So we, as a Black people, we have to find ways to own ourselves, if you will, because in this world that we live in, corporations have more rights than people. And this is me talking as a human rights activist. But again, I do think that there's potential, and I think again it starts with the youth. It starts with us being able to empower each other. As they say in Africa, there's a youth bulge. Again, these are the researchers and social scientists pretty much talking about how Africa has younger populations than the rest of the world. Africa or brown people continue to have babies. Europe stopped having babies. White Americans don't have babies. So this is going off of the data. We need to, again, just be proud of who we are and continue to teach. Because again, best believe, even though you don't see it on television or they're not broadcasting it or on YouTube, there might be some YouTube channels or videos that you might find. All of these non-African people and non-African descendants, they're trying to learn. They're trying to learn the dances. They're trying to learn everything. They're trying to learn how to make food. They're trying to learn how to style their hair. We don't have enough time, but the world is jealous of the Black woman. Let me just say that, because they're trying to strip the Black woman of everything. And even now, white men want to be Black women. But again, that's another topic. But and again, I'm not against any group. I'm not against any member of the LGBTQIA population. I'm just saying that as somebody who's calling it how I see it. But that would be my short answer before I get in trouble, and I don't want to offend anybody. So I'm just gonna shut up.
Okay. The next hand is from Skulule. Skulule, please bear with me. There is a question on the chat, right? It's from Babalwa. So can I please read it, and then Skulule will give you a chance after that. The comment, it's a question actually. It says, "Thank you so much for an insightful presentation. At the very beginning, you mentioned how it has been mostly Black people who would have a problem with your self-expression and choices around how you show up and disrupt acceptability more than their white counterparts. Why do you think this is? Why are we our biggest haters?" Yes, that's the question. It's two questions.
Wonderful question. Wonderful questions. Again, I thank y'all just for rocking with me and believing in me, and I believe in y'all as well. Just for the sake of time, why are we our biggest haters? I think intangibles rule the world. That's one of my beliefs and philosophies. Intangibles rule the world. So going back to Marxism, another reason I'm not a Marxist is because he's a materialist. I'm not a materialist. I believe in talking to my ancestors. I believe in praying to my ancestors. And as I once read, one of the disadvantages of being educated at these formal white institutions, as the brother mentioned, historically disadvantaged institutions or historically Black institutions, they make us pray or speak English, but our ancestors weren't praying in English. So why would we pray to our ancestors in English, right? So in the terms of spirituality, in terms of intangibles, the reason I started there, why are we our biggest haters? Jealousy, envy. They say corruption on a governmental level. They say institutional failure, but how does that happen? Where's the morality? This is why I talked about Nkrumah's conscientism or conscientism, because where's our moral compass? Where do we actually, me as a humanitarian, one of the things that I want to do, the biggest things for me is just to help people, right? So whoever I can help, as many people as I can help. I'm not helping so I can get paid. I'm not helping so I could be in Time Magazine. I'm not helping so I could be on the Forbes list. Because again, all of these things are contrived notions. The Forbes list is a bunch of people who have connections and they curate that. And even the billionaires list, like some of these people aren't really even billionaires. So they make us like, I know people might not love him or be fond of him, but I'm never going to stop liking Kanye. They make us hate ourselves and love their wealth. But when we talk about true wealth, where's the wealth? The minerals. Where's the most minerals? Where's the most resource-rich continent and countries in Africa? So again, they tricked us and made us think that colonialism stopped, but by mass and in droves, white people, Asians, Caucasians, whoever, they're all coming to Africa. The only people that don't go to Africa are African Americans. All these billionaires in the NBA, how many of them been to Africa? Only the people that come from the Cameroon or the people that come from Nigeria or the people that, again, that are actually African. But most Black people with money don't go to Africa. I'm not a rich billionaire. I could show you my background right now. I could talk about all of my life. I could talk about my bank account right now. I'm still on the come up. I just got a job because I had these interviews. But again, I'm leaning into the skill. Most of us don't love ourselves. So that reason, me going back to me showing up as my authentic self, I always do it. That's why I took the suit off. That's why, I was trying to take the tie off, but it got stuck. My bad. But again, like, I always show up as my authentic self, but that's just something that I got from Harlem. But everybody's not from Harlem. Everybody's not from, a urban area where people poured into you and empowered you, right? And again, like, when we think about, forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, but Umakulu, right? Just the institution of, again, our grandmothers, right? Like, how many of our grandmothers prayed for us to be here? That's the reason that we're able to accomplish this stuff. How many of our grandfathers died for us to be here? That's the reason that we accomplished this stuff. So for me, everybody's connected, but again, we don't act like that. We don't think like that. We don't see that they want to be like us. That's what colonization is. Colonization is the mind. When you control the mind, you don't have to control the heart, the spirit, or money, or politics, anything like that. It's all about mind control. So they control our minds, and they make us hate ourselves. So again, people don't want to learn African languages. But again, let me just tell you, if you were to teach the world, if you taught all these Americans, how many Americans is it? 360? Imagine you starting a course or you create books where you're teaching Kosa and Zulu and Venda and Swedi and all these different languages to Americans. That's your market. That's how you make money. Do a YouTube channel where you're teaching people, because that's where the world is going, because all of these schools is about to shut down anyway. Because again, COVID was an experiment, but again, like I said, they're watching this, so I'm gonna stop. The law is always watching. So again, it's like, how honestly you want me to be, but I have many answers, but we don't have that much time. So again, all I ask is that I'm gonna put my information back up there. Please connect with me, link me. Like, please link me. Like, I'm not hiding. I want to be found.
DaQuan,
Go ahead, bro.
we need to take one last question. One last
Go ahead,
question, please,
bro.
man. Okay. We have Oskhulule Bukani. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. Thanks, Mko. Before I proceed, am I audible?
Very much so.
All right, sure. So okay. Greetings to everyone. I go by Sikhulule Bukani. I'm based in Cape Town at the University of the Western Cape. First, I'm very honored, to engage with you, Dr. Lawrence. I believe that the work you're doing is very important for us Africans in Africa and in diaspora. So I'm very quite privileged to be in your presence, though virtually. So getting to my submission, I think consciousness of self in relation to Blackness, right? Begins with a deeper understanding of what constitutes Blackness. I believe that Blackness alone cannot just be simply reduced to markers such as skin color, such as language and ethnicity. It is also shaped by our political, the economic, and the structural identities and institutions to which individuals, these Black individuals and groups come to understand their place in society, right? So this becomes quite interesting when we think about class, right? So we may become conscious of ourselves as belonging in a particular class as Black people, while at the same time we recognize that the institutions and social structures through which that class is defined were not necessarily created for us, right? Nor do they necessarily reflect our own historical and social realities. Just to give a live example, we have something called the BEE, which is a Black empowerment, Black economic empowerment, which is a form of, Black affirmative action, right? And to some extent, my argument is that it has enabled Black individuals to enter and occupy positions within higher economic classes, right? But these raises a deeper question for me, right? Are we just creating Black representations within existing capitalistic class structures, or are we actually transforming the structure itself? So in other words, does putting Black faces into positions of economic power necessarily amount to transforming the system? If the underlying institutions and relations of that system remains largely unchanged, right? So this basically makes me wonder whether a genuine consciousness and liberation can be achieved through a reform or an integration into these existing political and economic structures, or do we need something that's more radical, right? And by radical, it's not just simply about transforming the political and economic structures, but also thinking about our sociological identities, our institutions, and understanding what constitutes a just and equal social order, right? I think that's also kind of goes hand to hand with what does, because you spoke about that you're more of a post-Marxist. What does post-Marxism mean to you? How do we then even get to achieve it, right? Can we achieve it by integrating it with existing systems, or will that need a more radical revolution in order, to actually get what we need for our own attainment of our consciousness? So that's my question.
Brilliant question, bro. Let me try to take the first half. Politically speaking, so politics are interest. So people who have like interests, they say there's no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests, right? That's what they teach you in theories of international relations for people that study the global political economy. If you or anybody, if one believes in Africanist ideals, which to me means being pro African, pro Pan African, however you want to look at it. Then again, politically speaking, there's a lot of wealth and capacity, human capital, human capacity, where everybody has ideas. Institutions are based on ideas, and everybody's ideas have value. That's what I believe. So I think, again, I don't think that I have all the answers. I think that, again, it's in these discussions like these where we're able to create. And if we believe and genuinely support each other and don't try to take each other out, then again, there could be substantial change. In terms of, again, what you talked about, I have that in my dissertation or my thesis as well, BEE or BEEE, whichever version of it, same thing, right? Yes, that policy, again, has been what was told to me based on the anecdotes from the accounts and the case studies that I have from Swanee and Soweto. It's just another version of classism because, again, some people, they perpetuate themselves, or what we have is we have like ethnic concessions. So different people from ethnic backgrounds, they support their brothers and sisters, and then things become what people consider tribal. So I think if people could transcend those notions of putting my ethnic group on, or putting my tribe on, or putting my set or gang on, or putting my family on, and if we could look at each other as extensions of each other, then again, I think that there's a lot of potential there. In terms of post-Marxism, what does that look like? That's something that I would love to talk to you about offline. We could continue talking about that. What I mean by being post-Marxist, like you said, I think it's just a conflation of things. I don't think we need to integrate with white people. I think we need to just integrate our ideals and our ideologies that, again, are Afro-centered and indigenous-centered or native-centered, right? There's been so many things that have happened to us over these centuries. But if we remember and we recognize true history, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle learned at the feet of Africans. So when we talk about Rome or Greek or Judeo-Roman society or Judeo-Christian society or all these ideals, all of these people, again, they were learning from Africans. Some people find power in that. Some people don't find power in that. It really just depends how deep you want to go. We want to talk about the Bible. If we want to talk about the origin of Christianity, these are all of the uncomfortable conversations that we have to have. And I think if we have these uncomfortable conversations, then we'll see that, again, we have a lot of wealth within us. And as I was taught, when they came to Africa, we had the land, or you all had the land, since I was born in New York, and they had the Bible. But when they left Africa, they never left Africa. They now have, you're holding the Bible and the white people own the land. South Africa is a perfect example of that, right? So the 3 M's, this is a W, but the 3 M's, mercenaries, missionaries, and merchants. So if they don't get you with Christianity, then they're going to try to sell you something. If you don't want to trade with them, then it's the gun, my man. It's the gun. They're going to send the mercenaries in. So again, we just have to understand the politics and how they trick or bamboozle us, or even they use sex. Sex is a tool of war. As we know, rape is a tool of war. So the Crusades, they're going to have babies and make the babies kill the fathers and the mothers, because again, that's how you wipe out a society. So again, we just have to be real with this. And again, I'm just going to stop there for the sake of time. And I just got a message from my daughter, so I got to go pick her up. But again, I'm available. Please holler at me. I'm not bougie. I'm not too uppity. Again, I'm if I was on the ground there with you, I would be right there with you. If I could fly there tomorrow or do some instant transmission thing and be there with my daughter, I'll be there right now. So again, I'm very accessible. Please, I hope you've all got my contact information. And again, just thank you for rocking with me.
Just 1 minute, just 1 minute, just 1 minute. To everybody who is present right now, can you please turn on your camera? I want to take a screenshot of this moment. Can you please show yourselves? Just 1 minute, DaQuan. I just want to take this screenshot, you know. Let me show myself as well. Okay.
We're in the homelands, Mgo, you're exposing us, man.
It does not matter. Masibone lo nsika fondini. Sibonisa insika fondini. Yeah. I think that's enough.
Round.
There's insika mnganam. Oh, okay. Let me take more. Okay. Great. Let me take another one. Okay. I think that's great. So everyone who managed to join us today, we appreciate you taking your time. Dr. DaQuan Lawrence, thank you so much for the insightful session. We really appreciate it. We hope this is not the last time we actually get to host you. Hopefully, when you come back to South Africa again, we're going to be able to host you physically this time around. Thank you so much, man. Good night, everybody. This is the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Make sure y'all get that link. If y'all joined, I share those books, that Google Drive. Get those books.
Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Let me check that.